When the fire burns low and the forest goes still, you start to realize how thin the walls are between you and whatever else lives out there. Welcome to Midnight Reddit. True stories that don't sleep. Turn down the lights, hit subscribe if you love scary stories, and share your own in the comments. My fiance and I hiked deep into a forest in Ontario, far from any trail or cell service. We camped miles from the road, surrounded by thick trees and complete darkness. Around 3:30 in the morning, my dog woke me by pawing at my face, his fur standing on end. Then, from just outside our tent, a phone notification pinged. A faint glow lit the trees, and a man's voice muttered, "Oh, fuck," before running off into the woods. His flashlight flailed wildly, the beam cutting across our tent as he crashed through the brush, deeper into the forest, not toward the road. We packed up in silence and hiked out before dawn. I've never camped that deep in the wilderness again. My husband and I were camping by a lake when rain forced everyone else to pack up. Alone in the dark, we noticed a red light moving in the trees, not bobbing like a lantern, but gliding in smooth, perfect arcs. It drew closer to our car, then vanished when my husband called out. Minutes later, it appeared again, moving silently toward us. We packed our tent as fast as we could, hearts racing. The light never came back, but I still see that strange red glow in my mind whenever I think about that night. In high school, my friends and I camped at our favorite hidden spot. Around 2 a.m., we woke to the sound of a shotgun blast. Two men were standing by our fire pit, one holding the gun, yelling for everyone to wake up. We froze, waiting for the next shot. My friend switched on his flashlight, blinding them, and demanded to know what they wanted. Turns out they were with another group and thought we were their friends. We barely slept after that, and later that night, two girls walked by in flip-flops, 7 miles from the nearest road. It felt like the woods were playing tricks on us. Once I camped along the Chattooga River after a storm. I strung my hammock on a cliffside and tried to sleep, but the woods came alive with laughter, high, cackling, and close. Coyotes. It sounded like witches circling the fire. I lay there, inches off the ground, clutching my sleeping bag until the sounds faded. At sunrise, we saw prints everywhere around camp. I still wonder how many pairs of eyes watched us in the dark. I once camped alone in the Marin Headlands. Just before dawn, I woke to slow, heavy footsteps approaching my tent. Then came a low, mournful sound, half sigh, half moan, right outside. My blood ran cold. I didn't move, didn't breathe, until it finally stopped. When the sun rose, I packed up and ran all the way down the mountain. I haven't camped alone since. A few years ago, my friends and I were asleep in the woods when loud music woke us. A car had pulled off the road nearby. Then came the gunshots, 30 of them in rapid bursts. We crawled from our tents, whispered, and armed ourselves, ready for the worst. When my friend shouted, "We have guns too!" the shooters finally noticed us and sped off. We found 30 empty shell casings in the dirt the next morning, just 75 feet from where we'd slept. One night, as I sat by the fire while my family slept, a voice began singing softly on the nearby trail. It was a woman's voice, drifting closer, then fading away into the darkness. I couldn't see anyone. My skin crawled. I told myself she was just lost, singing to stay calm. But deep down, I knew no one should have been out there at that hour. While hiking through a canyon, my friend collapsed from heat stroke. We were miles from help. I strapped him to my back with rope and climbed 2 miles uphill in the scorching sun. He barely survived. Sometimes it's not the forest mysteries that get you, it's how quickly nature turns against you. Once, at Grundy Provincial Park in Ontario, I stepped out of the car and came face to face with a bear holding a candle in its mouth. It waddled past me without even looking my way. My dog didn't notice a thing. Later that same night, the dog got sick and ruined the tent. As I cleaned up, I saw 2 more bears by the laundry area. The woods were full of them that week. Back in 2008, we were camping on the Wisconsin River when torrential rain hit. By morning, the river had risen 10 feet, swallowing trees and houses. We had no choice but to paddle downstream through debris, doors, branches, parts of roofs, until we reached the Mississippi. The current was so strong it made waves flow upstream. We made it out alive, but one of our boats didn't. I've never camped near that river again. On the Clyde River, I once woke to splashing just feet from my tent. The sound grew louder, as if something huge was climbing out of the water. I gripped my knife and held my breath. Minutes passed. Splash after splash. Finally, I peeked out and realized it was just the wake from a passing boat. I laughed in relief until a raccoon stole my food half an hour later. During the 2020 snowstorm in Arkansas, I fell waist deep into freezing water. The storm worsened, and I was miles from my car. I ran 6 miles through snow and wind to survive, my clothes frozen stiff. I ended up in the ER with blood clots in my legs, but I lived. Since then, I never underestimate how fast a calm trip can turn deadly. My cousin and I once backpacked into the Virginia mountains with her dog. At 2 a.m., a sound echoed through the woods. Half gobble, half scream, mechanical and unnatural. It was so loud it shook the tent. Locals later said we were lucky to hear it, though no one could tell us what it was. I still hear that sound sometimes in my dreams. In Australia, I was 25 kilometers into the bush when I saw a black horse watching me from 50 meters away. When I started walking, it followed. Always 50 meters to my left, step for step. When I stopped, it stopped. I built a rope fence around my tent that night, and by morning, the horse was lying dead in the same spot it had stood. It looked like it had been dead for weeks. At Martin River Provincial Park, I woke to a woman screaming in the woods. The sound moved closer, 30 feet away, then directly below my trailer. It was shrill, human, and desperate. When the sun came up, I found no footprints, nothing at all. People say it was a cougar. I'm still not convinced. At Indian Mound Reservation in Wisconsin, I woke to footsteps circling my tent. 2 slow, dragging steps, then a pause. Again and again. I could feel that it wasn't human. The camp sits on ancient burial mounds and the air was heavy with something old. The next night was quiet, but I didn't sleep much. My friends and I once camped in El Dorado National Forest, in a spot that always felt wrong. That night, the woods went silent, and I started hearing low voices on the wind. Then through my rifle scope, I saw a figure, human-shaped, but on all fours with arms too long. It crept along the tree line before vanishing. My friends returned, saying they'd heard it too. None of us slept that night. In Ocala National Forest, my friend and I were hunting hogs late at night when we saw pale human legs dart across the trail. Minutes later, we passed a man walking alone down the road. Miles from anywhere. No backpack, no light, just walking in the dark. We didn't stop. Some things you don't want answers for. When I was 13, I shot what I thought was an owl. The moment it fell, the entire forest erupted in howls and screeches. Dozens of voices shrieking from every direction. I dropped my gun and ran home as fast as I could. I still don't know what I awakened that night, but I've never hunted again. On a Boy Scout trip in the Manistee National Forest, we heard screams and metallic bangs deep in the woods. Our scoutmaster brushed it off as coyotes. The next day, a hiker told us he'd been yelling at whoever made that racket all night. It wasn't us. Years later, I found a recording online of the same sounds, from that same forest. Whatever it was, it's still out there. What about you? Have you ever camped somewhere that didn't want you there? Midnight fades, but the stories don't. See you next time on Midnight Reddit.